Hello, welcome to Take From It What You Will, where we discuss objectively the issues of the day. A lot of things been going on lately. Today is May 23rd, Monday, May 23rd, 2016. A lot of things going on. A few things I wanted to comment on, mainly concerning some of the political issues that are going on, as well as some of the other items that are financial items that are concerning me as well. And they're financial, political connections, I think. One of the things that's always concerned me, there's so many issues that I'd love to get to here, but one of the things that's always concerned me, and more so in the past few years, has been the way the Fed, and recently being, say, the last 5 to 10 years, maybe a little less than 10 years, since the 2008 crisis. The way the FOMC, headed by the Fed, which is set to the private market, or public markets, I should say, investment markets that are out there. The way that the Fed, through the FOMC, has more and more taken it upon themselves to try to control markets. I would need to research it further, but in my mind and the way I feel about it, no one should control any markets. The market should be free, should be open. Of course, you have to abide by the law, but essentially markets should be free to find their own levels. That's why people invest in them. When you have outside forces that are influencing markets to achieve a certain end, then people who are not privy to that information are disadvantaged in their investments. So it's the reason that this is illegal, not allowed, is that someone, unscrupulous person, can use this to impact markets in their favor or in the favor of certain groups. My concern is what's happening more and more with the FOMC is that they are looking at markets and trying to influence the U.S. economy by influencing these markets. And the main thing I see right now is this threat of interest rates. They hold the threat of interest rate increases over the head of the economy or the markets, and the markets react accordingly. And I think Janet Yellen and all of the FOMC are doing this intentionally to try and influence markets to either the currency markets, commodity markets, which in turn impact public stocks that are traded in these as well. And I think they're doing that intentionally to try to, for a political end, to try to maintain an economy through the end of this year at least, and perhaps influence the election. That's my concern. The Fed was established absolutely to provide advice and input and dictate, actually, monetary policy for the U.S. However, when that crosses over into the private sector, into the markets, I think you're treading a very, very thin line between influence peddling and the actual reason the Fed is there. That is their mandate, the Fed's mandate. I think Janet Yellen is playing a very, very dangerous game. Now, I have not reviewed it adequately, that is in depth, but I get that concern when I see what's going on and I see how the markets are reacting to the FOMC. And I think the FOMC should be investigated. very, very deeply, because the FOMC and the Fed are to have no attachments to the government. They're a governmental organization, but they have no attachment to the government. So are they a government organization? I mean, there's a lot of technical issues here that I think need to be reviewed, but that is one of my concerns today. Now, the other thing that's going on, I think that's just really interesting, and this gets into the politics, and I just love going into these things, working up scenarios, but I think you're seeing the scenarios now hash out. Now that we see Donald Trump is the presumed nominee for the Republican Party. Fine, that's fine. We've talked about it before, that the nomination for political party representative or candidate for president has nothing to do with voting. It's not a position. It's that party nominating a person. It has nothing to, does not take away from someone's ability to be able to run for president. But here's a couple of things that you're seeing, though. The media is apoplectic about it. The CNN, NBC, I would not include CBS. I'm actually quite impressed that CBS has been able to stay a bit more independent than the others. But CNN, NBC, you would think. I thought when Donald Trump is named the presumptive candidate for the Republican Party, okay, now we're going to focus on to the Democratic primaries because there's this big fight between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. None of that. Hardly any notice at all. I mean, barely. I mean, Bernie Sanders actually has to, or his people, I shouldn't say him, his people actually have to almost get violent and make threats like happened in Nevada for there to be any notice whatsoever. So Bernie Sanders is getting shortchanged. And I'm sorry, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is in Hillary Clinton's back pocket. Always has been. She's made no bones about it before. Always has been, and she's just not the person to be running this. But that's fine. This is the Clintons. Clintons have a lot of power. Now, believe me, we'll get into this a little later. When Donald Trump comes up against the Clinton Foundation, you're already seeing some of that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. What you're starting to see now, of course, there was some talk of third-person candidacy. And there still was, and I think maybe the Republicans did some looking at that. But I think what you're seeing now, I was just noticing in the last couple of days how the Libertarian Party is starting to get a lot of notice, especially on NBC and CNN. All right, what's the point? I mean, my goodness, Johnson and Wells, the president and VP candidates, one Johnson, ex-governor of New Mexico, Wells, ex-governor of Massachusetts. The Libertarians. I'm a big fan of Libertarians, don't get me wrong. I'm completely independent, but if there were a party I would align with most closely, it's probably the Libertarians. But they're starting to get airtime that they never did. And I think that maybe they're a bit surprised. I don't know. But what you're seeing now is, and this is my supposition, that the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton agglomeration, I shouldn't call it foundation because that's a different group. Clinton's backers and the Clinton candidacy, their campaign is doing this intentionally. They are the ones who are out there getting NBC and CNN, their lapdogs, to start reporting on the Libertarians. Why? Because if the Libertarians start becoming popular, they generally will seem to be taking votes away from the Republicans. So what better way to solidify a Clinton victory than the Republicans aren't going to run a third-party candidate, it appears, or come up with someone. They're getting right behind Trump, probably surprised Clinton. What do they got to do? Okay, let's get them to focus on the Libertarians, so the Libertarians now will become more popular and will pull votes away. So you see CNN and NBC running these because that's what they're being told to do. Or if they're not being told to, I mean, this could be a Godfather kind of thing, and the Godfather never actually tells his minions what to do. They just know what the Godfather wants them to do. And it could be the same thing with NBC and CNN. But it's interesting to see that happening. So I think you will see an upsurge in news about the Libertarians. You won't see any more about Bernie Sanders and Hillary. That's been decided. Excuse me, my screen went blank. That's been decided. So Bernie, poor guy, better ride off into the horizon. I love it that he's sticking on. I love it he's staying around in California, but he's going to have to make a whole lot of noise before he can actually come even close. I mean, it's been completely stacked against him. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. Political parties, Democratic Party has every right to choose whatever candidate they want. They don't have to go through this primary process. They can put anybody in there. It just means that if Bernie Sanders wants to run, he would have to run as an independent. He would have to run as another party's candidate, or as an independent running separately, which is something he could do. I don't think he will. I think to him, he feels that Clinton has the best shot at becoming president, and that he wants to get his issues into that campaign platform, and that's why he's pushing all this, is to push that campaign, the campaign strategy further to the left, and to get his campaign wants in there. So anyway, that is my thought for the day on the campaigns and what's going on. I think you're going to see, again, more and more of this attention paid to the Libertarians. I think the other thing that's very interesting, I almost forgot to mention, is the Egypt airplane that crashed. And immediately, of course, everyone was saying this is terrorism. And I think there's probably a good chance of that. I mean, that's the first thing everybody would jump to because of where it is. And of course, once it became known that Donald Trump had tweeted that, well, now everybody's backing off. And if you listen to NBC and you listen to CNN, the experts, and you listen actually the same on Bloomberg, you listen to the experts coming on now they're backing up and saying, no, it doesn't really look like it. It does not really look like terrorism. This was probably a mechanical malfunction and nobody's claimed credit for it, and so on, blah, blah, blah. And that may very well be. But the reason they're turning that around, and I would not put it past the Clintons to go in and use their influence with the Egyptians to see that they get the result that they want. I mean, that may be sounding far-fetched, but, if you like a good conspiracy theory, here's a good one to have. My guess is that determination will be that this is not, unless it's just super obvious, and there's stuff released that shows holes blown and things, that report's going to come out and say this was not terrorism, and then watch the Clintons go to work on Donald Trump on this and the Republicans. It's just such a interesting little farce that we're going through, and you could go back into do we really even have a proper election system now that as our founding fathers had intended, where you have a citizen government? No, you don't. You have two parties to choose from. Okay, well, that's one better than the USSR used to have, but it's a hell of a limited set of options. When you look at the two candidates we have, are two of the most unpopular people in the entire country are the ones who we appear to be having to choose between, and it comes down here more and more coming down to, well, who would you want least to be in office, and smacks of totalitarianism to me. I don't like it, but it's the country we live in, and either you love it or you leave it. So right now I'm loving it, but you never know what's going to happen in the future. Anyway, this has been Tim Miller again. Take from it what you will. I hope you watch this, and let's stay tuned and see what's going on. Very interesting year.